to start off today helping you guys figure out what to do to pass the time. One of the things that we found out that we really liked was what's called YouTube Art for Kids Hub, I think it was what it was. And it's kind of cool that you can do some drawing. So here's one of mine, all right? And I did this contest with Miss Huntley and Miss Muse. It's toilet paper, given the situation we're in. Here's one of my dinos, so you can check that out. But my son Ryan, he wants to show you his stuff, so go ahead, Ryan.
This is my Allosaurus.
Okay.
And this is my rattlesnake.
Show it to the camera, you got to show it. There you go, very good. And this is the creme de la creme, the piece de resistance. Show it to him.
And this is my Velociraptor.
Look at that. So we didn't even know how good we could draw until we started this, so you can pass the time. Hey guys, welcome to this new video. I just want to go over today's agenda for this video. It won't be a long one. But number one, the announcement on AP exams. So you can go and look at my Twitter. I retweeted a bunch of stuff from them. And it just tells you that more or less, they're only going to test on periods 1 through 7, which we are wrapping up right now on this last unit on World War II. So we've covered everything we need to cover. Except for, of course, we're going to finish out the unit. It's going to be a 45-minute exam. They are not going to have any multiple choice. It's all going to be free response. We don't know exactly, is it just going to be short answers or what? But that's what we think. If that changes, we'll let you know. And so that's bullet point number 2. I want you to make sure you go up on the website that you're informed. For example, I'm going to assign in the AP classroom a lot of practice short answer questions so you're ready for this exam, that you're used to the kind of question you're going to get. And of course, there's other enrichment stuff that I want you guys to be working on as well. Those are not graded, but I'm telling you, they are very good practice to make sure you have mastered and understand the main themes from this unit. Number 3, I want you to go to flipgrid.com and that code, you'll just type that in. So flipgrid.com/Oltmans2210. And just post me a message. Just tell me how you're doing. You can tell me a funny joke. You can ask me important questions, of course. But it'd just be nice to see your guys' face and hear your voice, since this is just such a bizarre time. And then after that, we'll just go in and go into the lecture. Like I said, not a long one today, but really relevant considering the time period we're in. Hey guys, welcome to another installment of A-Push with Mr. Oltmans, a journey through time. Today's lesson is going to be really quickly about World War II in the home front. This is going to be a major theme on the AP exam, of course, and it's really relevant to today. So what we're looking at mostly here is we're talking about the War Production Board. You'll need to know this. We talked about something similar in World War I, the War Industries Board, but this is, as it says, what converts peacetime industry to war industry. And so it says, for example, Ford is making tanks and bombers instead of cars. The government is making contracts with Ford. And so it's not that the government owns Ford, it's just that they made a deal that Ford will start producing things for the war. So this is really essential for the war effort. We also know that this is happening today, where President Trump has made contracts with different businesses to produce respirators or masks. I put a link to an article up on Twitter. You should check that out, with Hanes, who produces underwear. Well, now they're producing these masks. So it's the same idea. In a time of a crisis, the government will sometimes do this. So here are just some pictures for you to look at. This would be one of those factories. They're making bombers here. We know that who else is involved? Of course, women are heavily involved. And that's a major theme that you'll want to make sure you are aware of. Okay, I want us to look at this term, the production miracle. It's highlighted for a reason. It's really important to know that during World War II, that's what we called this, is this country that was in the midst of a depression, all of a sudden has this production miracle. And the War Production Board was essential in helping along with this. And I want you to look at this quote by Joseph Stalin. This is a communist. He hates our economy, but even he had to admit that if it weren't for this War Production Board, if it weren't for the American factory worker, that this war would have been lost. And so a really telling statement, and so I wanted to make sure you don't miss that. But just go through the rest of this PowerPoint. You can look at these different agencies, none quite as important as the War Production Board, but make sure you go through them, make sure you understand them, try to make some comparisons maybe to what we're going through now. I think that'll serve you well. So we see that the United States is going to help win this war, not just militarily, but at home, and the AP exam likely wants you to know this. So right now, I just want you to go onto the website, and I want you to go to the War Production Data Sheet, and I want you to try and work through that. In the next segment of the video, I'll kind of address those things with you. Okay, guys, so here is the assignment that I posted on the website, and I just wanted you guys to get a quick look at it. What this is doing is going through World War II wartime production. And so you can see, for example, right here, this is wartime expansion in the United States, 1939 to 1944. And so what I've done is I've asked you this question at the bottom. I'm not going to go through all of these, but obviously I asked you guys, how did World War II impact U.S. production, and how would this impact Americans at home during World War II? And so you're looking at this bar graph, and you can see that that the gross national product is now 150% of what it was in 1939, which is when the war began. And so we're seeing raw materials production, we're seeing the labor force, civilian employment, everything is over 100% of what it was in 1939. So of course, what does that tell us about U.S. production? It's increasing and increasing dramatically. Look at the manufacturing volume. And of course, what that means is you have more people working. The Great Depression being over because now they have to produce all of this war material. And so that's going to affect them that way. Raw materials production. So again, we know that who controlled raw materials. How is that going to impact Americans at home? So food to think about there. Some food for thought. If you scroll down, the next one, that shows you new construction activity in the U.S. And what I ask you here is explain the huge dips, which I think you guys can get from 1929 to 1932. And then I asked you to differentiate, what's the difference? It's going up from 33 to 39, but of course, in 40 to 44, it's continuing to go up, but what's different? And you look at the shading there, and you can see, obviously, it's military construction. So it goes along with our lesson today about war materials and war production. So if you scroll up to the next one, very quickly here at one more time, we're seeing that as war industries receive greater focus, how this impacts civilian life. So this is taking another angle. We get it. We know that they're producing more, but we can see that they're really producing all sorts more of war goods. And so how does that impact a civilian? Well, if you go to those restricted industries right here, you can see that they are really narrowed in these war years. And restricted industries are, as the note says down here, include motor vehicles, consumer goods, non-war construction. So this is obviously going to have an impact on Americans in the sense that they're not really getting all the goods that they necessarily would want. We want a new car, we want new clothes, and those weren't as readily available because of the emphasis on war production. So it does have an impact on your social life at home, and that's what I wanted you guys to be thinking about there. And then this one's a pretty easy one. I'll have you go through that. We'll go through the turning points of the war. So we talked about Stalingrad and El Alamein, and we talked about oil. We talked about all those things that are at stake in those turning points, and this kind of gets at the heart of that question. And then last but not least, I really like these maps. Me and Mr. Conway were going through these. We're pretty impressed with it. And so here's your German fuel status during World War II. And of course, you have your source of fuel supply with Japan. So if you start with these questions, it says, when evaluating Germany's fuel resources, where did they get the fuel supply from during World War II? And you go up here and you go through these different colors. They're not going to get it through the Caribbean. Why not? Because of the Monroe Doctrine and Roosevelt Corollary. It ties into those other periods. They're not going to get it from Mexico. They're not going to get it from the United States or the Soviet Union. Their only hope was the German synfuels in the orange, the German domestic, and the Romanian. And in a major war like this, that's going to have an impact on their ability to fight and wage a protracted war. And as the Soviets start advancing from Stalingrad westward, that Romanian oil, that's going to dry up.
And can Germany wage a war if that happens? So that's what I wanted you to think about there. And then it says, when evaluating Japan's fuel sources in 1940, what U.S. action hurt their war-making capabilities? Look at that. All right, 70% of Japan's fuel sources came from the United States. And what did we do that really is going to put a damper on any hope they have for a major war machine over there? And of course, you would know by now, it's the embargo. And what did they do in response to that embargo was, of course, they attacked at Pearl Harbor to try and take us out of the Pacific. And I hope that this chart helps you see just how important it was for Japan to control that Pacific region and control the flow of oil. Same thing for Germany as well. So this is what I wanted you guys to think about on these charts. Go through the questions, answer them thoroughly. I think they're great points of data. And on short answer questions, you sometimes on the AP exam will be asked to interpret data like this.
All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. But I do want to make sure you go up to Flipgrid like we put at the beginning of the video. Ask questions, just say hi again. You can talk about how my hair appointment got canceled. So I'm going for the mole, all right? And so you guys will be able to see my hair evolve throughout the next few weeks. But on to the next thing. It will likely be about the experience of women and minorities at home and during the war. So stay tuned for that. See you guys.